There you go. It just said invite people to join in.
Oh, it says live now in the top right corner.
It does say live. That's an awesome yet terrifying thought.
Are we live right now?
We're totally live right now, and this is working so well. All right, give me 30 seconds to print out my draft, just so I can go on paper, and then let's fucking do this.
Yeah, I should probably print out mine too. So is all this that we're doing right now going to be recorded?
Yeah, it's getting recorded on YouTube.
Can you cut all this stuff out?
Yes, yeah, I can either edit it on YouTube or cut it out. I can probably download the video file and put it into a video thing.
Cool. Is it only going to give us 15 minutes?
No. But I say we have 8 hours to broadcast. So I think we can do this in 8 hours.
Are we just going to bag the other videos and just call this our first one, or the other one's even going to work?
Yeah, the other ones are just going to be audio at this point.
Okay.
There's not much we can do about that. So
Yeah, no, it's not our fault. It's taking quite some time.
you have a slow printer.
Seriously, this is absurd.
Come on, man.
I'm like, come on. It's just the last page.
That or
Yes.
you just wrote novels for every damn player. At this point, like, most of my stuff is like, you know what I've said. If you've been reading, you know what I've said about this guy or this pick. So mine are little, pretty short blurbs.
My top 10 picks are like pretty short, but then I get into some
Yeah,
paragraphs.
that's every now and again I'll have one that's a lot. Or I explain why this guy is here, or why this is good, why this is interesting.
All right. Let's
One more thing before we get underway.
Well, once you've recorded your Google Plus Hangout, your Hangout is automatically going to get uploaded to your YouTube account. And that's going to show up under the Video Manager section at the top.
Okay, good. Alright, I know what to do from there. Alright, let's get into this. Welcome, everyone, to the first actual video broadcast out for the Roll-Toddy draft blog. This is our final mock draft, and it's a little late at night, so it is officially draft day, so happy draft day, everyone.
Like
And
Christmas, baby. It's like Christmas.
We are here to unveil our final mock draft before the real thing happens, give you our last few picks, our last few changes. There's been a lot of stuff that's come out in the media the last couple of days that's going to help iron out hopefully who we think is going to go where, and I think it's going to be really interesting. So thanks again, everyone, for watching.
A lot of stuff going on in this draft. So deep. Baker and I have been so pumped for so long. I mean, so many different scenarios. It's going to be so fun tomorrow. So we're excited, and let's get into it, Shake.
Yeah, let's do it. Houston Texans. I think you and I are pretty much agree at this point, Herbie, with who we think will go number 1. I had Jadeveon Clowney, the defensive end from South Carolina. I don't think there's any reason for Houston to not take the best player in the draft, the most athletic player in the draft, and the player with the highest ceiling and the best overall chance of just being an absolute superstar.
I don't care who you are, what your scheme is, what your need is. This is the best player that we've seen in the past decade. There is no reason to pass on this kid. Jadeveon Clowney is the absolute best player in this draft, best value, best motor, best everything. I mean, the kid is unbelievable. You can't pass on him.
No, I just don't think there's any reason to. But number 2, this is a very interesting pick. I think a lot of people are looking to trade for this pick. You've heard Buffalo trying to move up. You've heard about Atlanta trying to move up, and a couple other, and Detroit as well, trying to move up to this spot. But I think that if St. Louis holds on to it, they have to take wide receiver Sammy Watkins out of Clemson. They need a number 1 guy. I know you said that Jeff Fisher likes the receivers on his roster. I disagree. I hate the receivers on his roster. I think that's just media, whatever. And just not trying to diss anyone on his team. But Sammy Watkins, I think, is the guy who's going to be the number 1 guy. He's a 6'1", 6'2", great speed, great hands, physical player, does everything you want. And Sam Bradford needs a weapon. I think he finally deserves one after being beaten up, thrown to absolutely nothing these few years. They invested some money in him. I think it's time to get him to get a real guy to really go along with them and be that guy he can go to on those game-winning drives.
Yeah, I want to put Sammy here, but I just can't. I mean, if you invest that money in Sam Bradford, you got to protect him. And he got beat up. I mean, he's been beat up. And, I think he's got the ability to be the guy. I know he's struggled and he just hasn't had, really the opportunity to be the quarterback that he's supposed to be. But I think Greg Robinson's the answer here. He's my favorite tackle in the draft. He's an absolute monster. And I know you probably hate him a little bit deep down inside. But, I mean,
No doubt.
I just think you've got to make a priority in protecting him. And, with the Rams picking again at, pick 13, I think they can find some receiver talent there if they need it. And I think the receiver talent's pretty deep in this draft. So, yeah, I mean, Sammy Watkins is he's a once in every 5-year type prospect. But I want to put him here, but I think that protection is got to be priority number 1. You got to protect your franchise guy.
Well, like you mentioned, there's a lot of wide receiver depth. There's also a lot of offensive tackle depth, at least as far as the first round goes. So that's why I got Watkins here. You get your surefire guy because Mike Evans isn't getting out of the top 10 anymore.
Yeah, and my other thing is that at 13, I don't know if there's what receiver value goes at 13. I think there's a better player at 13, so that's another thing that crosses me up because Mike Evans and Sammy Watkins are the only guys that I think are worth top 10 picks. So, this is a tough pick. This is what makes this draft so fun.
Yeah, well, let's move on to number 3, Jacksonville. Gus Bradley had a rough first year, but really they started to come around at the end of the season. Their defense started to play better, and that's why I think they're going to go with Buffalo linebacker Khalil Mack, someone who really can be the face of that defense, can be an impact guy, a 3-down linebacker, rush the passer, strong against the run. Good in coverage, at least solid in coverage, not going to be elite as the kind of just build he has. But I think that he can really be the face of that defense, be the tone setter, and really do what Gus Bradley wants with that Jacksonville defense because I think that's how he's going to build the team, his defense out.
Yeah, I like that pick. I like it a lot. I think I could definitely see it happening. Just because of Gus Bradley and his defensive mind, I don't think it's the right pick. I think you need a franchise guy, and a lot of people have him fallen out of the first round. I think Teddy Bridgewater is the best quarterback in this draft. I have Teddy going here. I watched the video today. This kid, this pro day was just so unfair to him. When you look at his game tape, the kid can play football. He is out to literally support for his mother. Just his story, and I don't know how you can't draft this kid. Yeah, he overthrows some balls and he's kind of all over the place sometimes, but he's coming from Louisville. He's not playing, with an Alabama receiving core or an SEC, receiving core. It's I feel bad that he's lost his stock, because I really do believe that he's the best quarterback in this draft. I mean, Blaine Gabbert, I called that bust. I knew that was going to be a bust. I just think that Teddy Bridgewater is the right answer here. He's a guy that they need to build their offense around.
Yeah, I can't blame you for thinking that. I think Teddy's I'm in your same group with you, thinking that Teddy is just the guy. The problem is that his stock is just so far gone at this point, which is a shame. But one of the reasons I went with Mac, and I'm going to continue to go with Mac. But as far as keeping going in this draft, Cleveland at number 4 recently came out and said that they will not take Johnny Manziel with this number 4 pick. Herbie, I know you like that a lot, and that's something that you're a big fan of. But and since they're not taking Johnny where I had them originally, I think they'll take Blake Bortles. Teddy's stock has simply dropped. I don't like it. You don't like it. We can agree on that. But the fact is Blake Bortles' stock has stayed steady. It stayed where it is. I think he might end up having the highest ceiling in the draft, because Teddy has to put on a lot of weight for him to really make the arm strength improve. Blake Bortles just has to fix some footwork and a couple of mechanic issues. I think with Josh Gordon and an elite left tackle in Joe Thomas, Blake Bortles can have a lot of success in Cleveland. And what really, shockingly enough, something we haven't seen Cleveland really do in their franchise history is start to build what looks like a very good and legitimate team, which is scary for you and I as AFC North fans.
Absolutely. I think the Browns are on the rise. I love Bortles. I'm a huge Bortles fan. And if I had Sammy going at number 2, I would probably have Bortles going in here, because I think that's the right spot for him. But I still have Sammy on the board, so I have Sammy going here at 4, Sammy Watkins. I think you pair him up with Jordan Cameron, you pair him up with Josh Gordon. I think that receiving core just becomes absolutely deadly. And I think, Brian Hoyer didn't play badly. I hate to even throw that name out there, because it's just, you just can't bank on that. But I think if anything's gonna make him good, it would be that lineup of receivers. I just think that a terrible quarterback could come into that situation and be good with those guys, because they would just make him look unbelievable. So I've got Sammy going here at 4, because I think that and which looks like it's going to happen. An even better situation, if Teddy does drop, he's going to be there when the Browns pick again. If people think he's going to drop out of the first, and that would be an unbelievable steal. They got Sammy here, and then they got Teddy later. So I think you got enough weapons. You saw a little glimpse of Brian Hoyer that you can just back off on a quarterback a little bit, and maybe bring in someone in that later pick, like a Derek Carr or Johnny. I'm going to have Johnny Manziel going there later. So I think that you can get away with bringing in Sammy Watkins here at 4.
Yeah, and also moving on then to Oakland. This is where I have Greg Robinson. I just think this is not an Oakland Raider pick. I'm sure that if Greg Robinson's on the board, they'll go and draft Mike Evans or someone just absurd Mike Evans, while Mike Evans won't necessarily be a bad pick, or they'll go get like Eric Ebron, someone very random who's just very athletic and I'm not ready for it. But the thing with Greg Robinson is he is a phenomenal athlete at that left tackle position. He played in that fast-paced Auburn offense. He was very proficient in pass blocking and in run blocking. He's in shape despite his size. He loves blocking. One of the few guys that you see, offensive linemen who love to play football.
Just has like fun doing it. It's fun to watch.
Exactly. He's just a fun guy to watch block, and you don't see that a lot. And so I think that if this is the pick for Oakland and he's on the board, I think they should take him, start to rebuild that Raider offensive line, something that's really been lacking for quite some time.
So this is where I have Khalil Mack going. I think he's a guy that you build around that defense. The defense lost. That defense got a little gutted this offseason. They brought in Justin Tuck. You pair those guys up. I think he's a guy that you build your defense around, an unbelievable talent. I like your pick with Greg Robinson. I was watching somebody say on NFL Network that the offensive tackle just isn't a sexy pick. It's just nobody wants to kind of see the offensive tackle go. I like that pick of Greg Robinson there. Obviously, I have him going at 2, but I think Khalil Mack. If they want to establish that defense, that they need to bring in a guy like Mack, who really is next to Clowney, probably the most complete player in this draft.
Yeah, I think so. I can't blame you on that pick either. That'd be a great pick for Cleveland if he's on the board. And next we have the Atlanta Falcons with the number 6 pick. I have Jake Matthews going here. I think that even though I think Taylor Lewan is a very legitimate option, I think Eric Ebron is a very legitimate option. But also kind of any of the cornerbacks or even maybe a C.J. Mosley. But I just think that none of those players are quite worth the top 6 pick. But Matthews is a very complete offensive tackle. He's played both tackle sides. They could put him or Sam Baker on either side and do very, very well. Matt Ryan got really beat up, and he was the only one on their offense who really didn't go out for the season. So I think that he would be a good pick for them and make a lot of sense. Protect Matt Ryan. You keep that offense going. Your offense is your strong point. Might as well build on that while you have a high pick when there's no real elite defensive player at this point to pick or who most boards define as elite at this point.
I'm right there with you. I got Jake Matthews, the same pick. I think he's any man that can block for Johnny Manziel is a guy that can transfer into the league. I mean, he's a great athlete, great player, brings a lot of value. Obviously, I know probably Falcons fans want to see a sexier pick, but I think the Falcons need to build that defense, protect Matt Ryan, and really need to protect that offense, protect their franchise quarterback, and really turn that team around. There's no reason they should have played the way they did last year with the core that they have around them. So I think that Jake Matthews is the perfect kind of starting point to just kind of a temporary rebuild, which is the Falcons are in the midst of right now.
Yeah. Moving on to number 7, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Have once again a team with a ton of options, have a bunch of needs, but not really anything that's super glaring, just things that they need to take that next step forward after they've started to build a pretty good roster. And here I have Mike Evans going. I think that he's a lot like Vincent Jackson. I think that they're going to keep with Mike Glennon and McCown just for now since they signed him in the offseason as well. He's a fan of Lovie Smith. I think they have enough weapons on the team already, but enough good, solid weapons on defense that they can go offense. And they might take Taylor Lewan here. They might take Johnny Manziel here. But I think that they're going to stick with the quarterbacks they have for now. And if Glennon and McCown don't work out this year, they're just going to go with a Marcus Mariota next year or someone nasty like that. So I think Evans is the play here. Big, physical, catch the ball anywhere, pinpoint it anywhere. Needs to work on his routes, but Vincent Jackson would be a very good guy to mentor him. Very similar players. I think it'd be a nasty combination down the field.
I agree. I'm the same with you here. I got Mike Evans. I think you got Lovie Smith and Josh McCown all coming in together, and I think you get these 3 guys on the same page all at the same time in Tampa Bay with Vincent Jackson as a mentor. I think there's no way that Josh McCown can lose. And there's also, I know there's some talk about shopping Mike Glennon, but McCown's a seasoned veteran, so I think Mike Glennon's a guy that you want to keep around as a backup. Let him get comfortable with that receiving core and that coach. And once it's time, I think Mike Glennon's coming into a great situation, having an unbelievable 2 receivers with Vincent Jackson and Mike Evans on each side of the ball. So I think Mike Evans is the perfect value pick here for Tampa Bay.
Absolutely. And now moving on to 8, Minnesota Vikings. I have Johnny going here. I think I'm gonna regret that pick. Just because I know Mike Zimmer, he came out and said Roger's Pro Day, like that was a carnival, like that was absolutely ridiculous. All the rap music and celebrities and former President Bush there and the helmets and everything. But I just think that when it comes down to it, you gotta take him. And while once again I think Bridgewater is a guy that Zimmer would like more, I just don't know how his stock is. You and I love Teddy. I think a lot more people love Teddy than I'm led to believe, but everything I'm hearing and reading and seeing tells me that Teddy's not going to go in the top 10 anymore, and Johnny Manziel is. And if nothing else, having Cordell Patterson and Kyle Rudolph out there while Johnny's creating havoc is a big weapon to have. Patterson, I think, is a guy who's going to have a big season this year no matter who the quarterback is. And also just the idea of Manziel and that little guy named Adrian Peterson in the backfield is pretty terrifying. I think is a good building block for Minnesota to start building, try and get back to that powerhouse team they had not too long ago.
I think I've got Bortles going here. I think that Zimmer made the statement, and that it's just I still have Bortles on the board, so I think that's the right pick here. Zimmer made that statement early on, and I think that with the front office. It's just not going to happen with Johnny. So I think that Blake Bortles is the perfect option here. He's got the perfect offense set in place. I think Bortles is a Zimmer type guy. I think when you bring Bortles in at 8 here, you need to be careful. I think Christian Ponder is garbage, but I think you need to bring Bortles in as a competition quarterback. So while he should be the starter, make him earn it, because if he's as good as he is on paper, make him earn it. So don't bring him in as the starter. Put him in a quarterback battle, which should last a week. But you just want to make sure that he still earns it. So because I just think that's the right way to play it with this guy. So I think Bortles is the right pick here. Cordell Patterson, Blake Bortles. Are you kidding me? Like that's perfect. So I think that's the right pick here for 8 in Minnesota.
Yeah, that was before Cleveland came out and said that they weren't going to take Manziel. That was my pick too. So I can't say that you're wrong there at all. Buffalo, another team now, pick at number 9. Ton of options.
Looking to shop and move up.
Looking to move up for either Jadeveon Clowney or one of the big offensive tackles. But here, if I'm at number 9 with who they have, they could take Luan. They could take a defensive back. They could trade back or trade up. But I have them going for now. And maybe I'm a little biased just because I think that I just have an idea in my head of where I want certain people to go, and sometimes I want to make fits happen rather than I want to give teams credit for who they should draft. But once again, I don't think this is a bad pick either. Having the Bills taking North Carolina tight end Eric Ebron, number 9, give EJ another big weapon, actually tall, physically talented weapon, and it would help free up Robert Woods down the sideline. Would help EJ Manuel have a safety blanket underneath, the guy who can really break the seam and make big plays up the middle, and just be a possession receiver all at the same time. I think Ebron would be a great fit for the Bills. I would have no problem with him taking him here at number 9. That's who I have him taking.
You're going to be almost pretty sickened with me of where I have Ebron going, but I like that pick. I think that's got a lot of value. My image of Ebron has changed in the past little while here about what his value is. I've got Taylor Lewan going here. I love the Big Ten lineman. I think he's worth a top 10 pick. I think he's perfect for EJ. I think he's the guy that you want protecting EJ. I think EJ's got a good offense. Got a good offense in place. I think you definitely need to go address another wide receiver in the later rounds. I think you also need maybe another running back to complement Spiller. But I really like this Lewan pick. I think it's perfect for EJ. I think that's the protection that he needs, and that's what's going to take that Bills offense to the next level.
Yeah, I could see Taylor Lewan going anywhere in these next 4 picks, including Buffalo all the way up to St. Louis. And it's just what we've been talking about. This draft just has so many uncertainties because a lot of teams have a lot of options and a lot of good value players, all where they're going to be drafted.
Right.
But now let's move on to Detroit at number 10. I've been taking Oklahoma State cornerback Justin Gilbert. They've needed secondary forever. They just get destroyed defensively because they've got that great D-line. They've got Sue. They've got Fairley. They've got good defensive ends. They have decent linebackers, but they just have no one on the back end. They released Louis Delmas because of his injury problems and some of his on- and off-the-field issues, even though he was a great safety for them. So now I think they drafted Darius Slay last year in the second round at Mississippi State. I thought he's going to be a good pick long term. But let's get a guy in there right now who could be my number 1 stud corner right now. Gilbert is fast. He's physical. He's big. I just think there's no reason not to love this guy. And I have him just a little bit ahead of Darqueze Dennard, the Michigan State cornerback, just simply because he is simply faster than Dennard.
Love that pick. I had such a tough time not doing it. I think I've done it in my maybe once or twice in my past mocks. I've got Zach Martin going here. I think that Stafford needs just more protection. I got 2 tackles going back to back. I mean, Megatron is enough for him right now on offense. Some guys I think there's been some mocks where Mike Evans goes here, or maybe Ebron. I don't think that's necessary at all. I think you got
to re-sign Pettigrew.
Yeah, you just re-signed Pettigrew. I think you got to protect the staff, man. I think it's a great value pick here. Like Zach Martin a lot. I think he's just a really athletic, solid, just gritty offensive tackle. I think you bring him in at right and eventually move him to the left, or you can start him at left if you need to. So I had a tough time not putting Gilbert here. I agree with you. I think that secondary has just been weak forever. I know that we want that Ravens team. I mean, we simply won because of that. I mean, Calvin Johnson had a terrible game, but last season. But either way, I think either pick would be is the smart move here with the tackle or Justin Gilbert.
Well, next we have the Tennessee Titans at 11. And just like you had 2 tackles going back-to-back, I now have 2 corners going back-to-back. I have Darqueze Dennard from Michigan State, the big corner. He's probably the most physical corner overall and has some of the best lockdown cover skills. But he's just a step slower than Gilbert. That's why I have him just a little bit below, similar size. But he's a great pick here. Good value at number 11. Tennessee has a pretty mediocre secondary. They're not bad, and especially losing Altron Vernon is going to hurt, but no one is really bad. They're just not good. They have a very solid defensive line, and I think that having Ken Whisenhunt, giving him time with who's already there offensively and starting to build that defense now is going to help them in the long run rather than just trying to load up on offense and have just a weak, paper-thin defense.
Got the same position here. I just have Justin Gilbert. I think he's, I'm almost lucky having him here because I think that he completes that. I think you're right. They're not bad. They're just not that good. So I think Justin Gilbert completes them. I think he's, big, strong, fast. God, the change of direction on that kid is just unbelievable, and he's just a freak athlete. Fun to watch. I think he brings a whole lot to that Tennessee defense. I originally had Anthony Barr going here, and I've started to not agree with the critics, but I just know that a kid that's played that position for only 2 years, it's just a little bit of a risk to draft him this early. I do like, I would love that pick if they took Anthony Barr here. What does McShay have Teddy Bridgewater going here? I'm not ready to give up on Jake Locker yet. I just don't think he's been a little injured. Give him at least another year before you're ready to take a quarterback. But I think Justin Gilbert, cornerback, is the position that Tennessee needs to address here.
Yeah, I agree with you on Jake Locker. He played phenomenal last year. He just wasn't on the field for very long. I believe he had no turnovers through the first 3 starts he was on the field. Yeah. The problem is that he just kept hurting himself.
That's just unnecessary to take a quarterback here. That would be an absolute waste.
Absolutely. It's a luxury pick, and it's unnecessary. But let's move on now to number 12. I have stood by this pick with the New York Giants through every mock draft, through all the conversations. Every other mock draft has them taking someone else. C.J. Mosley from Alabama right here in Tuscaloosa.
Both do. I think we've had it the same through all 3 of our mocks.
To be a New York Giants. The New York Giants deserve to do themselves a favor and get them some damn linebacking help because they haven't done it in years, and it took trading for John Beeson for them to finally get a really decent linebacker because they really haven't had an elite linebacker or even a really all that good linebacker since Antonio Pierce was in their middle spot. And with John Beeson and C.J. Mosley, you get 2 rangy, strong, good tackling linebackers who are very smart, very mentally tough, are great leaders in the locker room and on the field. Perfect fit for New York. Helps out that defense, and the Giants can hopefully get back on their way to getting back to the playoffs.
I don't know how you don't take C.J. Mosley here if you're the New York Giants. I mean, pairing him up next to John Beeson, that's not like 2 different type players. That's 2 almost the same. I mean,
Similar, if nothing else. I think Mosley's a little faster, and especially after all these injuries. But other than that,
but the leadership ability, the guys that they are, the smarts of them. Just tackles wouldn't be missed. There would be just such rare linebacking mistakes in that defense, and Justin Tuck is now out in Oakland. I think they need to bring it, and they need to. It'd be like a Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman situation out in San Fran. I think this is the perfect situation for the New York Giants, and I think passing on C.J. Mosley here would probably one of the bigger misses in the entire draft.
I think so too. I've watched him all 4 years here in Tuscaloosa. And to me, there's no reason for him to just not be the guy here and not go in the top 12.
What we got now? 13? Rams? Back to Rams.
Yeah, St. Louis Rams. Here's where I have Taylor Lewan. And I went back to saying that I think Lewan can go anywhere from 9 to right here. And all 3 of the Lions, the Bills, and the Titans, and the Giants could all legitimately take Lewan if you say on the board. They all could use some tackle help. not only do but I do like the other picks I had before, but I also think that I just kind of want Taylor Lewan to be a Ram because I want them to take Sammy Watkins and then turn around with that second high pick that they have and get a bodyguard for Sam Bradford, and that's what Taylor Lewan is, an elite pass blocker who's getting better at run blocking. And now if they can go out in the second round, they have the 13th pick in the second round and get a good running back, maybe Carlos Hyde or Andre Williams or one of those guys sitting right there, you have a strong young core of players to help out Sam Bradford and really finally give Jeff Fisher and the Rams a fighting chance in that tough NFC West division. So Taylor Lewan, offensive tackle from Michigan, be a great pick here, great fit.
Love that pick. I just did it differently. There's so much the tackle talent in the first. I had my last. Zach Martin was probably the last elite tackle, and I had him going at 10. So I think there's a lot of tackle value, and they're going to go early. So I don't have my next best tackle. I think my next tackle going in this draft is Cyrus. So right here I have Clinton Dix. I think he's sure. It's just revamping. Yeah, I mean, I addressed the tackle thing. I got Greg Robinson in there. You could argue that you need to take another offensive weapon here. Maybe. I mean, you could potentially see maybe Marquise Lee going here. Maybe. I do like, if Taylor Lewan's here, I think that'd be a huge miss if they didn't pick him and if they took Sammy first. So I think that's you did it. Just a different scenario. I could see that happening as well. I think Clinton Dix is is a center fielder. I mean, the kid's unbelievable. He's all over the place. Smart player, sure tackler. Not a killer like Calvin Pryor is, but he's just that really smart, strong value guy that you want on your defense. And that, I mean, I could see them being a top 5 defense in the next 2 years with that defensive line, and you bring in Clinton Dix. So, either way, either scenario, whether it's a tackle, whether it's defense, whether it's receiver, I think it all depends on who goes at number 2, whether it's, Greg Robinson or Sammy Watkins.
Absolutely. And I just think that the Rams have needed offense forever. I just think that this is how you have to go. But let's move on to the Chicago Bears at 14. I have Aaron Donald, defensive tackle from Pittsburgh. There's once again, if he's on the board for Chicago, there's no reason not to pick him. They haven't had a penetrator in the middle since Tommy Harris, and that's been a while since Tommy Harris was anything in the NFL. I think this is a great fit. Mark Trestman can then continue to focus on that offense that's really starting to progress. You have those 2 big receivers in Jeffrey and Marshall, with Cutler coming back healthy, hopefully, maybe. And then, but now the Chicago Bears are a defensive-based franchise. You have to build the defense if they're going to be successful, especially when it gets to be December and January in there.
Yeah, I got Aaron Donald as well. I love the kid. I mean, we talked about him yesterday. Short, strong, fast, just explosive, nitty-gritty grind player. One of those guys who's increased his value, throughout the combine, and it just showed just an unbelievable combination of skills. His pop is unbelievable, and his pursuit is just as good. Julius Peppers is gone. You've got to revamp that defensive line, and I think you need a run stuffer. Obviously, it's a different position, but I got to ask you, maybe not, I mean, obviously not here, but do you see a quarterback going to the Chicago Bears this draft?
Potentially, just simply based on depth. They lost McCowan. They don't really have anyone to back up Jay Cutler, and he's been injury prone. I think that definitely early in the second, they need to look at offensive tackles depending on who's still on the board. If you have a Cyrus Kawanja, whose stock is kind of up and down, or Joel Bettino, the kid from Nevada, who's been a little up and down, I think you take him. And the only one I'd really consider taking super high, and third, maybe, and I really want to take him in the third, is Zach Mettenberger. Other than that, maybe you go get a Logan Thomas or someone later, a Taj Boyd late, but at the same time, I'd probably just stick with who you got, and maybe try and sign a veteran free agency.
I don't even know who the backup is in Chicago now that McCown's gone.
That's not Caleb Haney anymore. That's all I know. But let's keep moving. Next, we have those Pittsburgh Steelers. Herbie and I's best friends from the AFC North. But here's where I have Zach Martin going. I just, Pittsburgh is really needy at the corner position and at wide receiver, especially with Mike Wallace and Emmanuel Sanders gone now. But Pittsburgh Steelers football is built on defense and running the ball. They need offensive line help. They haven't. David DeCastro hasn't been quite as good because he had that knee injury, and you haven't seen that elite guard guy that you saw, the prospect coming out of Stanford. You haven't gotten much from any of the other guys you've drafted either. But Zach Martin's a guy who I can see playing either tackle position or playing guard, potentially even playing center. He has some experience there early in his career at Notre Dame. I just think he's a very versatile guy. I think he's a hard-nosed guy. I think he'd fit in well in Pittsburgh and really help Ben and Le'Veon Bell out, which I hate to see that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a good pick. It's not my pick, but I think you've got LeGarrette Blount coming in and Le'Veon Bell. I think they need some help. I think gotta help. I mean, Roethlisberger is at the end of the line here. I think one more stick and you got. There's no way he's getting out of the pocket anymore. So I think that's a great pick. I have them taking Darqueze Dennard. I think a lot of mock drafts have Darqueze going here. I think the only reason I have him going at 15 is just because of his speed. He lacks just a tiny bit of that elite speed that would probably put him in the top 10. And maybe have him surpass Justin Gilbert. But I think. God, that's just a graveyard of a defense. They're just so old. They need to get younger. They need to get faster, and they need to bring in a stud like Darqueze in my eyes.
Mm-hmm. And he's another guy who just really fits the Pittsburgh Steelers mold without a doubt. Let's move on to Dallas, though, here at number 16. Here's where I have Clinton Dix going. I've watched him for the past 3 years, too, here in Tuscaloosa. Guy's a center fielder who can play either safety position. He can come down and support the run. He's not necessarily just a pure hitter, but he's a form tackler. He's not going to miss any tackles, especially near the line of scrimmage. He's very rangy. We had a conversation earlier, Herbie, about whether you take him or Calvin Pryor, and I said and you asked, well, is that just because he went to Alabama? I said no, simply because his range is just in a different world than Calvin Pryor's, as good as Calvin Pryor is at what he does. And so I think that him, being a Nick Saban coach DB, would be a good fit in Dallas. Dallas needs defensive linemen more than anything, but there's none here that are worth the pick that is. And Dallas' secondary gave up big plays like it was their job last season. So I think that would be a great center fielder. And then if they can go and get a defensive end or a pass rusher in the second round, it gives a lot of help.
Yeah, I think that's a great pairing, and Morris Clay. Morris Clay back there. I think that's an unreal pairing. That'd be the smart pick here. I've got the Jerry pick here, which I have Anthony Barr going right here. I think Anthony Barr is just he's a guy that I could honestly see going a lot earlier, but I think teams are just afraid of him because he's only played the position for 2 years. Obviously, he doesn't fit the scheme here, and he'd have to change up his position, but I think he's got the athletic ability to do that, and I think maybe you beef him up a little bit more. You can put his hand in the dirt and change him up a little bit, but I think Anthony Barr, I see this as the Jerry pick. I see this as the guy that, Jerry wants. He loves his game and all this stuff, and it could end up being the dumb pick. I think would be the smarter pick here. Obviously, I have going a little earlier, but Anthony Barr is an unbelievable player. I think he's a special breed. I love the position change from running back to defensive end, and I think he's a guy that at this point, at 16, he's a guy that I'd be willing to change a couple things around in my defense for.
Yeah, and you've seen DJ Williams have a lot of success of being a linebacker and a tackler, pass rusher, do a little bit of a do-everything running back or linebacker after changing over from a running back. Excuse me. But now let's keep moving. We have your Ravens here, Herbie, sitting here at number 17. I think we have the same pick here. I have Calvin Pryor. I know you like that pick as well, so I'm going to let you kind of get into that pick because I just don't want to talk about
it. This pick was brutal for me, dude. I told you the other day. I have Ebron and Calvin Pryor still on the board right here. And the fan in me wearing this hat right now wants Ebron to be in Baltimore. I think he'd be huge for that core. Ebron's just not a natural blocker. He's not very good at it, plain and simple. And I think that diminishes his value more than people realize in this league. Obviously, he's a great offensive weapon, and I think that jacks up his value a lot, but not to make him a top 10 pick. I think it drops him more than anything else. We brought in Owen Daniels. And we re-signed Dennis Pitta. So I think that value-wise, Calvin Pryor is the right pick. He's an absolute killer. Pairing him up with center fielder Matt Elam back there would just kind of sure up this kind of new rebuilding Ravens defense. And you know, I think it's the perfect pick here, Calvin Pryor. I think he fits the scheme. I think he'd work well with Matt Elam, and I think that this is more of a, I think if I'm thinking like Ozzie Newsome does, the best player available and the guy that brings the most value to your team, I think Calvin Pryor is the right pick.
Yeah, you know, that's pretty much what I said. I just think he'd allow Matt Elam, even though Matt Elam's a guy who can really play both safety positions. In the NFL, he really is more of a free safety. And Calvin Pryor is a pure strong safety. He's going to come up, he's going to knock you out, he's going to play tough in the box, and he has some pretty solid range and coverage too. Like I said, not as good as Ha-Ha's, but still very good range, especially for his skill set. And it's just, for the Ravens now, it's just setting a tone in the post Ray Lewis, Ed Reed defense for the Baltimore Ravens. I think it's just another start that you have to do. Does the offense need help? Yes, but that can wait. This is a very offensively talented draft, and I think that getting a guy like Calvin Pryor, who really fits exactly what you need in his position, is going to be very beneficial for the Baltimore Ravens. Let's keep going. We have next the New York Jets, Gang Green. I have Brandon Cooks, wide receiver coming out of Oregon State. Just a kid who is so much like Steve Smith. Every time I watch him on tape, he's fast. He's not very tall, but he has solid hands. He's explosive. He's good after the catch. He's good catching the ball in traffic. He's not scared to go over the middle despite his size. He even kind of likes going over the middle because more times than not, a guy tries to lay a big hit, and he's so small he just kind of scoots by him or brushes off the hit and keeps going. I believe he led the nation receiving, so there's that. You know, that's important. And so I just think he's a guy who, with Eric Decker now being in New York, would be a perfect fit and would give Geno Smith something to really play with and have a good time actually playing offense and having a real weapon.
Yeah, I think wide receiver's the pick here. I like that pick. I've got Braden going a little bit later. I've got Odell Beckham Jr. going here. I think he just brings a little bit different of a player. I think he's just a little stronger. He makes tougher catches. He's just a different type player. I see him as maybe just like a little shorter and a little smaller of an Anquan Bolden in a way, and a little faster. So I think he brings the value. Yeah, I think he brings the absolute value that Geno needs. Pairing him up with Eric Decker, I think if Geno wants to hold on to that starting job, he'd need a guy like Odell to make tough catches, be the guy in the end zone, and I think obviously, we both agree the receiver pick here.
Yeah, I think that at this point, Marquise Lee, Brandon Cooks, and Odell Beckham Jr. are really interchangeable. It just depends on what you want and which one you like more personally, or whoever GM you are. And I just thought that Cooks would fit better next to Decker. I just like what he does, kind of bring that small size. They can do some end-around stuff with him more. You can do that with Beckham too. I just think that for whatever reason, Brandon Cooks I had a better feeling about him going there and going earlier. But let's move on.
All the receivers here, I think this is where their value. All those guys, you got Evans and Watkins going early, but now right here, probably starting at 15 with the Steelers, this is where you're going to see that those guys really be kind of the number one receivers to go. Kind of if you started at 1 here, this is where that group would go.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. This is where the value really starts to skyrocket on those guys. But let's move on to Miami at 19. I have them taking Morgan Moses to make a bookend tackle of Wahoo Wah tackles with Brandon Albert now signing there. I think Moses is an athletic guy. If you watch him, Kuiper made the point, actually, when I was watching some of the stuff in the pre-draft coverage, that Morgan Moses actually played better at left tackle than he did at right tackle. But he would definitely play right tackle for the Dolphins. So, that kind of makes me a little anxious about this pick for whatever reason. But I think at the same time that, you get him into the system, you get in the NFL, at this point, it really doesn't matter what tackle you are. You have the same responsibilities on both sides. You're not one more run blocking heavy with the right tackle like you used to be. I think you both have to be solid pass blockers and solid run blockers. I think Moses has a good combination of that and size. And I think it's just about time that Miami builds an offensive line for Ryan Tannehill, something they really haven't done for any of their quarterbacks in the last few years.
I agree. Same type of pick. I've got Cyrus going here. A lot of people could say that's a little overvalued, a little bit of a reach. I really, one of the bigger things how I differentiate Moses and Quanjo is ACC and SEC. I think, Cyrus has played the tougher talent. He's played the big games. He's ready to come in and start next to Brandon Albert, and I think he's ready to come in and solidify that line for Ryan Tannehill. I think he's a great player. I didn't test well. A little question about his athleticism, but I think he's one of those guys that you bring in, get him the proper coaching. Obviously, he's a Saban guy. You get him in, and you bring him into Miami and get him into a professional organization. I think he has got such a high ceiling, and he's a value guy here, and he can only get better.
Yeah. Just as an Alabama fan and now a proud alumni of the University of Alabama, it feels so weird to say. I am very excited to see Cyrus prove everyone wrong. I was at his pro day. I was at the original pro day where he wasn't supposed to work out at all, and when scouts kind of saw him in a sweatshirt and gym shorts, they're like, "Is he about to work out?" Threw on cleats, came out there. Lateral movement was great. You could still see, yes, that knee was a little shaky, but not any more than it was supposed to be. So it wasn't anything drastic like people said at the Combine. I think he's going to get a bad rap. I would have him here too, maybe even going earlier if it wasn't for the draft stock and all these people being scared of them. I hope that he gets picked around where you're having him picked, Herbie, because he deserves it, and he's a great talent. But let's move on to Arizona. Who do you have going to the Cardinals here at number 20, Herbie?
I love this player. I think, it's too bad that he's not valued any higher. I've got Ryan Shazier going here. I just think he's a stud. He can play a couple different positions. Just the athletic ability and the grit and grind of just busting through the line. He can bust up. He can really bust up an offensive line if he wants to. He's just kind of a headhunter, and he makes sure tackles, and he's kind of all in on every tackle. He's the value guy that you want in here. That that defense is in a little bit of a rebuilding phase. They're a little old. I don't think you need to, the quarterback pick, I can almost see a little bit. I just don't think it's just worth taking a quarterback here. Obviously, you want to have a guy grow up under Carson Palmer. So if they take Derek Carr, good on you. But I think, you need to address, I think you need to bring in the best player available here. And I really do believe that's Ryan Shazier. I think he's an unbelievable talent.
Well, for me, I do have them taking the best player available, and his name is Teddy Bridgewater, the quarterback from Louisville, who you have going so high. But just, like I said, from what I'm hearing, he's not going to go high. But if I'm Bruce Arians, I had that great success with Andrew Luck in his rookie year when I had to take over as coach. And now I got hired away from my own head coaching job. I have Carson Palmer. I can give Teddy Bridgewater a year, maybe even 2, or at least a year and a half, to put on weight. I want to see Teddy Bridgewater gain 25 pounds. Period. 20 minimum, just to make sure he is over 220 pounds when he's taking those hits, because I think he's a good enough athlete that his actual overall speed and how he uses his legs is never really going to change. He's always going to be kind of a guy who's maybe not super straight line speed fast, but has enough quick twitch athleticism that it's not going to matter how much weight he puts on his body, and he needs weight. It's going to improve his arm strength. It's going to improve him as a player, and it's going to help him as a quarterback overall and be a long-standing, successful player in the NFL. That's why I think that if he's on the board right here, which I think right now he's going to be, I'm Arizona. Yes, I need some more weapons to help him out, but like we talked about, this is a receiver-heavy draft. They can go get a tight end in the second round or another running back or something like that to help him out. I take Teddy Bridgewater here. I put him on the bench for a year just like Carson Palmer was. That's a good mentor for him to help him stay patient, help him stay humble, and get him ready to be a superstar in this league and really help this Arizona Cardinals team that is not that far away from contending. They're, 10-6 this year and probably one of the best divisions in football. Why not? I think this is a great pick and great value.
I absolutely love that pick, dude. I think if I didn't have Teddy going so early and he's going to drop, then that's the only way I'd take a quarterback if I was Arizona here. Derek Carr, I just don't see the worth. I just don't think he's that good. So, I think Teddy, this will be, if he's not going to start day one, this is the perfect situation. Come in under a guy like Carson Palmer, put on 20 pounds, take a year off, come into the league, address all the problems that, all these guys think he has, like Mayock thinks he has. I think this would be a perfect situation for him. So if I do not have Teddy Bridgewater going at 3, which I do, this is where I'd put him. That's a great value.
Yeah, I just think you can't get any better than that. Let's move on to Green Bay Packers here, number 21. This is where I have Ryan Shazier going. He's a guy. He's a lot like C.J. Mosley, playing in the role that C.J. Mosley will probably play in the NFL if he goes to a 4-3. But now reversed. I have him moving into that middle linebacker spot in the 3-4. just being the rangy sideline-to-sideline / cover linebacker that CJ was here in Alabama, best comparison I have right now. And that lets A.J. Hawk, who's starting to get up there in years, really do what he does best and stay around the line, be the smart, efficient tackler he is around the line and reading the gaps. But Shazier is also a guy who's not scared to play up at the line. He's also a guy probably now needs to put on about 10 pounds, but just has all the athletic ability in the world and really has a sense and a great nose for the ball. I think that's a great pick for Green Bay, who just always seems to need defense.
Yeah, I like that pick. I like that pick as well. I think I think a couple mocks have CJ Mosley going here. So either way, I think they address that linebacking position. Aaron Rodgers has completely masked the fact that this defense has just not been stellar the past couple years. I mean, and people honestly.
Not even when it's the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean that's what's keeping them away from it. So I think this is definitely a place where they do need to address defense. Even though I don't have them doing it, this is where I have Eric Ebron going. I think this is. It's going to be late. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he'll go earlier. But I just think that his blocking ability really demotes him as a tight end in this league. He really his blocking ability just makes him a glorified receiver. And I just think if you're going to play him as a receiver, draft him. But if you're going to take him early, then you got to slim him down and just take tight end off of his mind. Because because at that point he's almost just like a Mike Evans. So I just think that right here, he as a tight end, this is where he's valued at 21. So if you're going to take a tight end, then you got to bring him in here at 21.
Yeah. Especially because this is just, like a spread offense in college. It's just give the ball to Rodgers. Now, yes, they do have Eddie Lacy, who was phenomenal for them as a rookie and really balanced out the offense finally. But here, you just lost a couple of your tight ends, actually. And I think that putting in a guy like Ebron, this offense is perfect. He can be kind of their Vernon Davis. So, if Vernon Davis wasn't still one of the elite tight ends in the game, I would say San Francisco should trade up and try and get a guy like Ebron, but and have Vernon Davis kind of teach him how to be not only a great athlete at the position, but be a great blocker too. But I think Ebron would be a great fit there if I didn't have him going so early. But now we have Philadelphia at 22, coming off that Chip Kelly offense, very impressive in their first year winning the division, going to the playoffs, really were a threat down the line. And I just think that even though they need to help the defense, and they should try and help the defense, Chip Kelly's going to go with this wealth of wide receiver talent that you have in the first round. They're going to take Marquise Lee, wide receiver out of USC. Kelly knows Marquise Lee. He saw him for 2 seasons. Those were probably his 2 best seasons at USC. They were his 2 best seasons at USC. He's a guy who I don't get when people say he's not a burner. No, he didn't have a great 40 time. But everything about the last 3 years about Marquise Lee is about how just freaking fast this guy is and how good he is with the ball in his hand. So I think in a high-paced offense like Philadelphia and that hurry-up passing attack, just getting the ball in his hands quickly and having Jeremy Maclin back, he'll be a great replacement for Deshaun Jackson. And maybe overall in the offense, not necessarily an upgrade, being that Deshaun Jackson is a top-tier receiver, but a guy with a little bit more size and just a little bit more physicality that can help out that offense and can be great with that run after the catch ability.
I agree with the position. Wide receivers to pick. This is where I really love where I have this kid and Braden Cooks here from Oklahoma State. I mean, I think he's
really seen a lot.
Yeah, I just think if I'm Chip Kelly and I'm looking at this kid, I can't I'm like, how did I not get this kid to Oregon? So. I just think that this kid fits Chip Kelly's offense bar none. I think he's a perfect replacement for Deshaun Jackson. This quick, short guy with the crazy speed. You can put him anywhere on the field. You put him in the slot. I think he's a great guy for Nick Foles to kind of grow up with as now the official starter. This deep. This Eagles team is finally clicking, and I think they might be pretty dangerous coming up here in the playoffs pretty soon. So I think this receiver is definitely the right pick here, and I think Cooks is the right option.
Yeah. Well, Kansas City now here at 23, the Chiefs were just great up until they had to play the Broncos and then obviously the Colts in the playoffs. But they're a team who I think need offensive weapons. This is where I have Odell Beckham Jr. going. Once again, the last 3 receivers I picked in their 3 spots, I could see any of these 3 receivers going, but Odell Beckham's still on the board. You pair him up with Dwayne Bowe, another former LSU Tiger. Bowe, who I think is still a number one receiver, has just been up and down. He hasn't been consistent, and I think the offense now under Andy Reid doesn't necessarily cater to him. Caters through Jamal Charles and how efficient Alex Smith is, but I think with Odell Beckham on the other side, you finally add a speed element to a speed and size combo to the wide receiver position. You take pressure off Charles, you take pressure off Bowe, and you get a return man to replace Dexter McCluster, who left for Tennessee. I think Odell Beckham is the perfect fit for Kansas City. I couldn't see them going for anyone else here at this point.
I agree. Again, I agree with the position. I have Kelvin Benjamin going here. I think he just brings in, he's like Bo. He's got one of those big wide receivers. So you have two huge guys that would just make throwing the ball in the end zone a whole lot easier. I like the thought of bringing in the speed, and I think that can be addressed later. I think if you've got a guy that you can put two big guys on the outside, and then get to the second round or the third round and get a little speedster like I don't even know, maybe like Dree Archer or something. I don't even know. So something like that. I like Kelvin Benjamin. I don't know why. I think he's obviously better than pick 23, but he kind of showed up his last season, and him and Jameis together were an unbelievable combo. I just love his display in the national championship game. I think that that last catch really honestly boosts him into the first round for me, and I think he's a really good pick. I just hope he's not going to turn into Bo. I've always liked Bo. I've always drafted him in my fantasy league, and then he always doesn't pan out for me. It drives me crazy when he has all the ability in the world, and I think that's the same the same situation here with Kelvin Benjamin. So I think it's the right pick. I hope it works out.
Yeah, I've got to say, Benjamin's definitely a guy who's been a little up and down with his stock. He's a guy who I've kept in my first round, but we'll get to him in a little bit whenever I have him picked. Let's move on to my Bengals. Who dey? Right here at number 26. Still a playoff game, still hurts our sin. Paul Brown just being pissed the entire time. But I have been going with Kyle Fuller, cornerback out of Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech players just always are up to snuff. They know what they're doing. Bud Foster and Frank Beamer just know what they're doing out there in Blacksburg, Virginia. They put out good, if nothing else, very solid NFL players. And I think that Kyle Fuller is probably one of the better cornerbacks and better athletes overall they've had in a while. Maybe since Cam Chancellor, has made his fame with Seattle now. But I think that Fuller, he's a very good athlete, not necessarily the fastest, but great turn of direction, great awareness, great athleticism, especially when trying to get the ball into his own hands and pick it off. We need talent. We, the Cincinnati Bengals, because, I can say that just like you do with the Ravens. I think that the Bengals need just youth at the cornerback position. You have Dre Kirkpatrick, who's kind of started to come on a little bit. Whenever he finally gains all that weight back from being injured, I think Dre will be a force in the NFL. You still have Pac-Man Jones. You still have Terrence Newman. You still have Leon Hall, but Leon Hall's coming off another Achilles tear. And I think that Fuller here is a good pick. I believe you told me that you really like Roby to the Bengals right now, Bradley Roby. But I just think with the off the field concerns and just it's happened 3 or 4 times now, I don't think that Roby is going to be the pick here.
Yeah, we're agreeing on pretty much all positions here. So again, I've got a corner going here. I think you pair the right guy up with Dree Archer. Dree Kirkpatrick. You've got a top 10, top 5 defense, which you guys have already had a great defense in the past few years. I think Bradley Roby's the pick. I like Kyle Fuller a lot. He's my Maryland hometown boy, baby. I like him a lot. I think, and I've actually got him going next to San Diego. But I think Roby's the right pick. I really love Roby. You know how much I loved him. The off-the-field stuff kind of bummed me out. I think that's going to hurt him, and which is why he probably won't go here, and I think you're probably right in taking Kyle Fuller here. But I think, if you take it away, which you just can't, I think Bradley Roby is the better corner. I think he's bigger. I think he's got a better range And I think he makes big windows small with his change of direction. And he's got crazy long arms and kind of like a spider on the field. And he's really aggressive. So I'm high on Roby. The off the field stuff bums me out, but I hope he's out to prove that doesn't affect him, and he's the player that he's kind of posted to be.
I've already have the tweet prepared that if the Bengals do pick Bradley Roby, and you guys will all get to see it if you follow me on Twitter. So I know I'm going to tweet if they pick Roby. Probably be the first time I'd be happy that the Bengals picked an Ohio State player. We all know I'm not the biggest fan, and bringing a guy with off the field issues from another school I'm not a big fan of wouldn't be my favorite pick. But you're right, Roby is a phenomenal athlete, great range, great size. Just has those off the field questions and some technique questions. But let's keep going. So you said you have Kyle Fuller here to San Diego next year, correct?
I do.
You do? Well, I have Anthony Barr going here, and I love this.
I like that pick a lot.
This pick is just disgustingly good for me. Once again, I agree with you. I think Anthony Barr would be great around the top 12, top 15 picks. But I just, from what I'm reading and what I keep hearing, that people aren't high on him. People, like you said, he's inexperienced at the position. He's not as athletic as we think he is because he didn't test well and doesn't look at his tape. Well, he produced. And I think that at a certain point, production has to come into it, especially when you're playing in what is a very good league in the Pac-12. He stays in San Diego. He stays in his comfort zone. He's got a great pass rusher in Melvin Ingram on the other side of him, another kind of hybrid guy, and Jared Johnson, who's going to be a good mentor for him. So he doesn't have to come in and be their elite pass rusher immediately. I just think that all signs with pointing to him in San Diego make a lot of sense. And I think that the Chargers will be very happy with the product they get out of Anthony Barr, just a disruptive force off the edge in that 3-4 defense. And they've really needed pass rushers since Sean Merriman and Sean Phillips just left and or went downhill. So I think that's a great fit.
Yeah, I love that pick, dude. And honestly, I almost want to change, but I've got Barr going earlier. I just think he's better than 25. But if you're if you're going to devalue him and put him at 25 for him playing the position for 2 years, yeah, I guess 25 is the right pick. And I think that's a perfect home for him. Obviously, I have him going to Dallas, and I'd put him here if I didn't. I've got Kyle Fuller going here. I think either way, you need to address the defense. You need to upgrade that secondary. I'm not worried about the offensive side of the ball. Kyle Fuller, I agree with everything you said. I mean, good size, great ability, not freaky fast, but he's got great change of the direction and really plays. He's got great coverage skills, great ball skills. Love the Virginia Tech corners. I think either way, if it's Barr or Fuller, I think both great picks here.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's keep going. Cleveland with their second pick now. Getting the Indianapolis Colts pick that was Trent Richardson pretty much in that trade that happened earlier this fall. I have them taking Kelvin Benjamin here. I still think Benjamin is worth the first-round pick. You're right. His stock is up and down. I think when people tell me that, well, he was just good for this season, what did he do the rest of the years? I was like, well, look who his quarterback was in exchange. And while, that might even be more of a knock against him, I think that just having a different kind of leader there in Jameis and just having that offense around him, having all those other guys around him, really helped him reach his potential. He's still a little unpolished. His routes aren't great. He can be kind of a step slow getting forward, but he's a long strider. He's a big body. He's got solid hands. Needs to work on just focusing in a little bit. But other than that, he's a great pick here. I think he's great value at the end of the first round. And I have him going here. Pairing up with Josh Gordon was only going to help him out because he's a guy who can kind of learn to be that possession receiver, red zone threat, while Gordon's taking the top off defenses. And, he's a guy who, when he really starts to get his motor going, he can take the top off the defense, too, with those big, long strides. He reminds me of just a very unpolished Plaxico Burress. And I think that's really going to be the mold that he fits in Cleveland, the kind of the new Cleveland team.
That's a good comparison. I think that's a great pick here, too. Pairing him up with Josh Gordon, I think, is actually the key for him. I think Josh Gordon takes all the pressure off him in becoming the player that he needs to be over the next 2 years. I don't think he's going to come in and be a stud right away, but I think he brings a lot of value, and he grows into a top receiver in this league if he's paired with the right guy. Dude, I hate myself. I succumb to the pressure. I just don't like this pick. I don't like this player. I just can't wrap my mind around it. But I succumbed to the pressure, and I kept him in the first round. I got Johnny Football going here.
About time.
Yeah. I just can't commit. I can't love him. Listen, I'm not taking anything away from his talent. He won that Heisman outright. He dominated the SEC. He dominated the NCAA. I don't think his game transfers to the NFL, and I also don't think if you throw a couple $1 million at this kid that he spends it or he behaves himself very well. So Yeah, I think they need to address the quarterback situation at some point. I think you need to bring someone in and honestly just compete with Brian Hoyer, and just make me know in my head that that a rookie can come in and start over him, because I really kind of don't want to give up on him just yet. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put Johnny Football here, even though I just hate it.
Yeah, well, it's just whether you love him or hate him, he's going in the first round. I think is kind of how people have to go about Johnny Manziel at this point. Just too much star power, too much good highlight film, and yes, there's a lot of bad things to pick apart in that highlight film, but and then all the interviews, he's just been spectacular. There's no way he's not going in the first round, and if he doesn't, I will be sitting here with my jaw dropped the entire night. But
that being said, Johnny's probably gonna go earlier. Let's be honest, but another probably a great, really a steal pick if Teddy Bridgewater's still here, or if any of these other quarterbacks are still. I wouldn't take Derek Carr here, but if Teddy Bridgewater's ready to drop, and you address a different position early on, and you didn't, and the Browns don't take it. I mean, they're not going to take Johnny, and if they don't take Bortles, then I think that right here, if you got Teddy Bridgewater on the board, go ahead and do it.
Absolutely, I agree. There's no reason not to. But let's keep on keeping on. Now we go to the New Orleans Saints, who fell short to Seattle in what was a pretty good playoff game. But here I have them continuing to add to that defense. I think this is another team that could take a wide receiver. But I have them taking Stephen Tuitt out of Notre Dame. We talked about him in our D-line conversation. Just very versatile guy, but I think he's definitely a better fit as a 3-4 end. Just a 5 technique guy. He can get after the passer. He's over 300 pounds. He's a super freak athlete. Just a guy who's great value this late in the first round. I think he's going to add a lot of good pass rush to that 3-4 line. He can almost be kind of a J.J. Watt kind of player, someone who defenses have to plan for, just with how athletic and strong he is. Perfect fit for a evolving and improving 3-4 defense in New Orleans under Rob Ryan.
Yeah, I got the same type of position. I almost put D Ford here, but I got D Ford falling out. I'm putting Coney Ealy here. I think if you put him here, he's maybe a little small for the position in the 3-4, so you might need to bulk him up a little bit. But Ealy's a beast. I love him. I'm not high on Tuitt. Obviously I told you yesterday. I think he might get lost in what position he really is. I think if he's going to go anywhere, I think you're right in putting him in New Orleans. I think that'd be a smart pick. I think Coney Ealy's got more versatile value. I think he's a little faster, a little more athletic. He's smaller, so he doesn't have as aggressive of a pop, but that's just because of his size. So I think either way, both picks would be smart. I think Coney Ealy is the right pick, though.
Very fair. Now, Carolina, who really have just had a terrible offseason outside of getting...
Probably the worst. I think they've had the worst, dude.
I just think so. They've just lost everyone who's supposed to come back, it's bad. And then you lose Jordan Gross. And that's why I have them replacing Jordan Gross with Cyrus Kouandjio, my boy here from Tuscaloosa here in Alabama. And I just think that Rivera the only reason I'm picking him over a wide receiver is just because Rivera said protecting Cam is our number one priority, and he's right. This is a deep wide receiver draft. Take a wide receiver later. You can get Devontae Adams in the second round or trade up for someone that you want. But the tackle talent goes very, low and starts to really deplete after Cyrus. So I'd say I'd take him. I'd protect Cam. It's an absolute steal. Really getting away with murder at this point by getting Cyrus at the 28th pick in the draft. I'd take him. I have an athletic SEC-trained offensive lineman. Alabama pumps out linemen like it's their job. Pumping out a lot of players like it's their job. But you get Cyrus in there protecting Cam. He's a good athlete. He's going to be able to deal with Cam running around. There's going to be a small adjustment to that because he doesn't have that here, obviously protecting AJ for the last few years. But I think that Cyrus will be a great fit for the Panthers offense, what they're trying to do with some of that athletic hurry-up stuff they have.
Yeah, when I think about it, the only reason I don't have a tackle going here is because I think all the real value is gone. Morgan Moses is the only other guy I'd consider putting here, but I think he falls in the second round mainly just because he played ACC ball. I just see him as an early second round pick instead of a late first round. So I've got Marquise Lee going here. I've got him still on my board. I think coming down value-wise when you're looking at Morgan Moses, and to me, looking at Morgan Moses and Marquise Lee, he's the guy that you need to take here. I think it's a tough pick because I know you want to protect Cam, but I think you get Marquise Lee and Cam Cameron on the same page. I think that's a deadly combination. And God, it's a tough pick here because I don't have Morgan Moses going anywhere, and I've got literally I think 3 receivers about to come off the board in these last couple of picks. So I think Marquise Lee, value-wise, is just over Morgan Moses here.
Yeah, for me, I personally expect the Panthers to have a slide this year. Just losing all that talent and all those kind of core players on offense and defense. I can't see them, just getting better and better and better because of it. So I think if I'm Ron Rivera, I'm hopefully, being a realist and kind of forecasting that it's going to be hard to be as good as we were last year. So let me protect my long-term investment in Cam Newton with another long-term investment. And like you said, you find number 1 receivers in just about every draft. We've maybe seen 2 drafts in the last 6-7 years where there hasn't been a clear-cut number 1 receiver. So you have to expect next year that a Nelson Aguilar or someone is going to be sitting wherever you are in the mid-first round, probably where I expect them to be, and you can find yourself a real number 1 receiver next year. But you got to protect your quarterback first. And I'm a big fan of building from your lines out. So their defensive line is obviously about as good as it gets in the NFL. Offensive line needs some work. Let's build our offense through our offensive line. We can always run the ball and play, some backyard football if we have to win games with offense. And plus, we can go get a number 2 who can play as a number 1 for this year, and like a Devontae Adams or someone like that here in the second round, and still have a pretty effective season.
I honestly couldn't drop Marquise Lee any farther. I mean, 20.
I can't blame you.
He's probably just way too late here, honestly. So, value-wise for me and the way my draft has gone, Morgan Moses, Marquise Lee's going to go here.
Yeah. Well, let's go on to the New England Patriots, who fell short to the Denver Broncos in the AFC title game. I think we both have the same pick here, and I think it's just a phenomenal pick. I assume you have Rashid Hageman, the defensive tackle out of Minnesota here, Herbie, because I haven't heard his name yet. No, he's your boy.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it. I think this, anywhere else, Rashid Hageman's probably the wrong pick. I think New England, the reason he goes here is because it's New England. I think Bill Belichick is the coach that Rashid Hageman needs. I mean, he obviously had some off-the-field problem. The way I've heard him talk in interviews and stuff, he's got a little bit of cockiness and a way about him that I don't really love. But the player that he is, 6'6", 310, converting from a tight end. The guy is unbelievable. He's an unbelievable talent. You don't know how much longer Vince Wilfork has. I think you can. If there's any defense this guy needs to be a part of, it's that Patriots defense. And he's just an absolute freak of an athlete. So strong. And it's got way more speed than anyone who's 310 should have. So I just think that the combination of the player on paper that he is worth honestly way more than this, but a little bit about him as a person and personally kind of brings him to this value right here. But I think anywhere else he's the wrong pick. At 29 with the Patriots, he's perfect.
It's definitely a perfect fit. I think there are a couple other places he could fit in and still be very successful at, but just where his stock is right now from what I'm reading and hearing and seeing on television, I think that this is just perfect. It's just too easy for Bill Belichick. This is going to be that pick that's going to be in like about 10 seconds. You're going to get off everyone's going to get off the stage for the last pick, and then we're going to get right back on stage with Hageman here. Just who better to model yourself after than Vince Wilfork at this stage? A guy who's on the last legs of his career, but is the same 6'6", 300-plus massive human being, just a mountain of a man. Pass rushing, run stuffing, does everything kind of threat, plays every technique well. Perfect mentor, perfect fit. Perfect discipline situation with Belichick. I don't think that there's a better home for him besides maybe San Francisco or Baltimore or Pittsburgh than right there in New England. And where he is right now, I think that's a great fit. But let's keep going. San Francisco, 49ers coming up. God, what a great NFC Championship game that was. I still remember that like it was just watching the other day.
That was crazy, dude. That was wild.
Yeah. Then the Sherman highlight right after the game. I mean, Richard Sherman stole a show at the end of the game, made the winning play, and then had the best soundbite of the year.
Baby.
And he just got paid, as everyone I'm sure saw today, signed a record deal for a corner. But back to San Francisco. I have them taking Jordan Matthews, the wide receiver wide receiver from Vanderbilt. Herbie, you and I have loved him all year since your Rebels pulled off that game-winning play against his Commodores after he just made that ridiculous. I just think that game defines who he is, not only as a player, but
God,
then
he was tough to stop that game.
I met him at SEC Media this past year, came around and shook every single radio correspondent, media correspondent's hand, could not be more polite, could not be more confident, but not cocky. So the character's there. Then you get on the field. You're down, they were down 3 or something at that point to Ole Miss. Gets a concussion, just gets blown up, comes off the field, vomits, puts his helmet back on, maybe swishes out of mouth with some water. It goes back onto the field, catches a monster touchdown pass to go up in the game. And, before Jeff Scott rips off that run, things weren't looking gloomy for the Rebels. But what more do you want? He dominated the SEC, the best conference in college football. I don't care who won the national title this year. It's the best conference. You can hear it from both of us all day long. He dominated the best conference in college football, playing for Vanderbilt, the perennial doormat, just continuously the worst team in the SEC, and he has helped turn them into him and James Franklin, who's now at Penn State. But I don't
who is their quarterback? I don't even know.
Austin Carter Samuels and 3 other guys who we're never going to hear from again once they leave Vanderbilt and leave the national spotlight of the SEC. This kid deserves to be a much higher pick than this, especially because everyone was questioning his speed, and then he runs a 4.4 at the combine and at his pro day. What the hell more do you want, honestly? So I have him going late here. I think he deserves to go higher just with the kind of character and talent he is. But in San Francisco, yes, he doesn't quite fit the mold. They need a guy who can take the top off of defense, and he's not necessarily that guy, but I just think he fits into the culture of San Francisco. We'll bring another strong character guy and strong talent guy to go along with Crabtree and Bolden in that receiving core. And then just think about, you still have 3 big 6'2", 6'3" receivers going out there with Kaepernick running all around, causing havoc too. I think it's a great fit. I think it's great value this late in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, you and I both love this player, and we just really can't wrap our minds around why his stock has dropped so much. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I think this is undeserving. We both have a receiver going here. I just couldn't decide, honestly. I was stuck in the middle between these 2 guys. I just watched so much film and kind of made myself fall in love with Cody Latimer, and that's who I have going here to San Francisco. I think the value of this player is just a little bit better than Jordan Matthews. I think he brings just another aspect of speed and a kind of different wide receiver here to San Francisco. So I put Cody Latimer here. The way you talk about Jordan Matthews almost makes me want to switch. But I just think he brings that one different element of tough catch and speed combination that makes me want to put him in San Francisco before Jordan Matthews.
Yeah. You see, Cody Latimer, I thought about actually giving him to Carolina in this draft. Just that seemed like a pick that could potentially happen. Your favorite player, you and every Ravens fan favorite player, Tandon Doss, just makes me not want to pick Cody Latimer in the first round. They just everything about them right now and how all their stock was going into the draft just seems exactly similar to what was going on. And so I'm just a little worried about what's going to happen.
Yeah, where's I think Tannen went down to Jacksonville, I believe.
Somewhere. I'm not even sure. But I
agree. The Indiana wide receivers are not great.
And just the offense doesn't quite translate. But Latimer, I think, is someone who looks like he has a little bit stronger hands than Tandon ever did, even though that was one of Tandon's strong points, and obviously that hasn't translated. But he's also a little slower, so maybe that'll kind of help balance itself out when he gets to the NFL. But let's keep going. Now we have the Super Bowl champion runner-up, the Denver Broncos, who just want it to be next season after what happened in the Super Bowl. Just so bad. Just want this season to be starting back up so they can go set new offensive records. But here I have them going with defense. I think that they honestly reloaded enough on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively in free agency. I don't really know if it matters what pick they take. But I have them taking
one of the better off-season teams here, too. One of the better off-season jobs.
Maybe the best one without a doubt overall. But I have them taking Timmy Jernigan here. I think that Timmy is a great value this late in the draft. We talked about him, just a guy who almost works so hard that he works himself out of a play. But I think in Denver, with all that veteran talent, Von Miller, now DeMarcus Ware, Terrence Knight, and Jack Del Rio being the guy there, I just think that it's going to be a very good fit, very helpful. Once again, having a real penetrate in the middle of that line can only benefit you as a team. I know that personally from having Geno Atkins. I think that Jimmy Jernigan can be that guy for Denver and just keep making that defense nasty because they didn't do it. They got Aqib Talib, but they lost Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie. They're not great at corner. This could be a pick where Bradley Roby goes. But I think that continuing to improve that defensive line is going to help that little bit of weakness at corner just kind of go away or just kind of be masked by what they can do as a pass rush.
God, what a solid pick that is, dude. Honestly, I mean, it passed over my mind, but I mean, God, when you think about him and Vaughn and Ware all in the same line, man, and Derek Wolfe, I mean, God, that would be deadly. So that's a great pick, dude. I mean, really smart pick by you. Good on you. I have them taking Jason Verrett here. Champ season.
Oh yeah, the cornerback, lost champ.
Yeah, defense is, I think, really where they need to address. I think you could argue that they might need another wide receiver, losing Decker, but they got West and they've got Demarius. So I think Jason Verrett is the right pick here. I think this is a pick that they could also consider shopping or maybe trading up. But I think Jason Verrett brings enough value that I'm not ready to see him fall out of the first round. I think he might be short, and people could argue that he's worth an early round second pick. But I think with Aqib Talib there with the little veteran leadership and the player that he's become, I think that's a great mentor for him, and he covers enough of the field to kind of give Jason a little bit of slack coming into the league as a rookie. So he kind of reminds me, who's that kid that came out of Boise a couple of years ago? That went to the Jets.
Oh, Lowry. Kyle Lowry.
No, not Lowry. Kyle. What's his name?
I know who you're talking about. Now we look like we don't know what we're talking about.
I've now stumped myself. It's probably because it's 1:30 in the morning. But I love this kid. We're not ready to see him. I'm not ready to see him fall out of the first round. I think he's got great value. I think his athletic ability makes up for his size. So I think Denver needs to stay here. Or I think it's worth Denver staying here at 31 to pick him up and kind of shore up that defense.
Yeah, Verrett's a guy, he had that great 40. He really played well. And, he played at TCU, who always has good defensive players. They haven't stopped putting out good defensive players, so I can't blame you for making that pick at all. I just think that with Denver, I didn't go secondary simply because they signed Talib and T.J. Ward. I think that that's going to kind of help them combat any possible or not combat, but it's going to help them focus more on the defensive line and starting to bridge that, build that run game back up and not really have to worry as much about having secondary issues, which really was the problem down the line.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, we're on to our last pick of our mock draft. It was Kyle Wilson, by the way.
Kyle Wilson. I
had to find it.
Yeah, I was like, God.
Boise State, who's now one of their safeties, I believe. But Seattle Seahawks, Super Bowl champion, re-signed Richard Sherman recently. Russell Wilson probably going to get a deal here soon. They don't have a wide receiver that any of us can name at this point. But I still don't have them taking a wide receiver here. I really thought I would, but I just don't think that they're going to be the team who reaches on Cody Latimer. I have Jordan Matthews as someone I had here, and I think he'd be a great fit, but I have San Francisco, the rival, snatching him up. So here I think that they're going to go and keep replenishing that defensive line. They need to add a couple new young players. Coney Ely, I think, is a great fit here. We talked a little bit yesterday in our D-line discussion about how Coney Ely needs a team that loves playing defense, loves football, and can really light a fire under him at any time. Seahawks, perfect. Don't even need any more explanation than that.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick, great value pick. Obviously, I got Coney going 27 to the Saints. But I think you're right there. I think that defensive line, just one more, not many holes that the Seahawks need to fill right now. And, too bad that Jared Allen didn't go to Seattle. That would have been fun. That would have been fun to watch. I kind of wanted to see that happen. I guess I kind of made my pick a little easier here by putting Cody at 30. I've got Jordan Matthews going here to 32. So if Jordan Matthews is still here, I think he's the absolute perfect pick for Seattle. I think getting him and Russell Wilson on the same page. Sidney Rice, I've just completely given up on.
I believe they cut him too, so it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
No reason to keep
Wait,
trying.
did they? Wait, I thought they brought him back. Did they not?
Or did they? Maybe they did, but I knew they cut him or at least gave him a
I
lower
think they
salary.
cut him and they re-signed him. I don't know. Who even cares? He's garbage. So I mean, I think you put him and Percy in the same receiving core. I mean, I think it's a deadly combination. You know, he's the kind of receiver that they don't have. I think he'd be the receiver that they wanted Sidney Rice to be. So I think Jordan Matthews is honestly, he shouldn't fall out of the first. And if he's going to be the last pick in the first, so be it. I think him and Russell Wilson paired together would be quite the combo.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have for our 32 picks. But Herbert, who's someone who you wanted to put in the first round but just didn't quite make your cut of your first 32 picks?
That's a good question. I think about Timmy Jernigan, who kind of fell out on me. But one guy that I'm just really kind of obsessed with right now is this kid Kyle Van Noy from BYU. He's like just kind of you watch him play and he almost just like bounces around, an offensive line and is just like super athletic. And I think he's almost a little better than Ziggy Ansah when he came out. I think he's just a kind of a rare breed.
You when Ziggy Ansah was getting all the draft hype, he was the star of the team, and sure enough, you're right.
Yeah, I think I think if this was the last year, I think. I think this guy might have gone before Ziggy last year, maybe. So I think he's kind of a fun player that I've loved to watch, and he's kind of one of a gut feeling player that I have. I think he finds a great niche in the league. I think he ends up being a huge sleeper value pick in the second round. I think if he drops in the third, that would be ridiculous.
Yeah. I agree with that. For me, Bradley Roby was definitely one of them, but it's just I can't deal with off-the-field issues right now. There have been too many. You had the thing with him and Carlos Hyde at the beginning of the season, another small incident in the middle of the season, and then now right before the draft, you're caught drunk driving. And one was about potentially hitting a woman in a bar. I'm just not putting him in my first round right now. But then the one who I really want to put in, but the value of nose tackles goes down. It's Louis Nixon III from Notre Dame, a guy who I've really liked for a while.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, he's my guy, even as a Notre Dame player, and I'm not really a fan of Notre Dame in any way, shape, or form. But like we talked about yesterday, he was one of the few guys who really deserved to be on the field in that national title game. He was having a great year until he hurt his knee. He is your prototypical nose guard. He is going to take three blockers and push forward and try and push them all the way and probably do it more times than not. He's another guy who's very, very comparable to Vince Wilfork. But when it just came down to it, he wasn't quite worth, because of the knee injury mostly, wasn't quite worth a top 15 pick to go somewhere like Pittsburgh or Dallas or something like that. And then when it just kind of came to this back part of the draft, there wasn't anywhere I could really fit him in. Maybe San Francisco takes him instead. But San Francisco's defense is so good at this point that I think that they're kind of focused on the offense and helping Kaepernick out a little more. Because you saw San Francisco wasn't the same team even with Bolden until Michael Crabtree came back and Vernon Davis came back. So to me, I think that San Francisco will focus on offense, and Louis Nix is going to slide into the second. But someone with a young 3-4, a brand new kind of 3-4 scheme, maybe even in Atlanta early there in that second round, is going to scoop him up and make him into an underrated, an underappreciated star in the NFL.
All right, so give me your bust pick and your sleeper pick in the first round.
Sleeper pick? Ooh, someone who could just really kind of sneak in. Or you mean someone who could sneak in, or someone
not necessarily sneak in, but someone that maybe you've got late first who you think could have ended up, someone could have regretted passing on him early in like maybe the top 20.
Kind of just looking back over a lot of my notes, I think it's going to be this is tough. I want to say Jordan Matthews because I just went on my little rant, but I'm going to go with someone who I went on a little bit of a rant with earlier, and that's going to be Cyrus. I'm going to go with my Alabama guy. I think just the end of the season left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, especially for Cyrus. I mean, he let the defensive end, I can't remember his name right now, for Oklahoma, beat him right around the edge in that Sugar Bowl on what was definitely going to be the game-winning drive where Alabama wins the Sugar Bowl, and I sleep a lot better that night. And he just, he let him right around. He didn't care. Cyrus had a terrible Sugar Bowl. He didn't have a great Auburn game against D Ford when he'd been really good against speed rushers the entire time. But I think when it really comes down to it, we look at this draft 3-4 years down the road, I think people are really going to regret not taking Cyrus Kouandjio much higher, especially those guys who need left tackles and those teams who are just having sack problems all year. Cyrus, I think, is going to be a stud. We talked a lot about it when we did our comparison between him and Greg Robinson. I think that overall, though, I think Cyrus is that fourth tackle who deserves to be in that top 15, top 20 picks. It's just not going to happen, and it's going to be a shame when Carolina or someone snags him up late and looks really, really smart for doing it.
You got a bust pick for me?
Bust pick. Here, to give me your sleeper first, and I'll think about my bust a little more.
All right. My sleeper. Actually, let me look through it. You know what? I know exactly who it is, and I'll tell you what. I think it's this kid Ryan Shazier. I think he's just not really getting a whole lot of credit that he deserves. I think he's a little slim right now, and I think once you get him in and you bulk him up a little bit, I think he's going to be an unbelievable player. And I think where I have him going to Arizona, and I think where he would be the ultimate sleeper is if he's your pick and he goes to Green Bay. I think that pairing him in the same defense with Clay Matthews would just make him that much better. And I think that Shazier was really, I think he's just kind of definitely a sleeper in his first round. Definitely deserves the first round, and I think he ends up being one of the best backers to go in this draft.
Well, then for my bust pick, I have two guys who I've never been super excited about, but I think still deserve to be first round picks. And this isn't, once again, it's a potential bust. It's not a guy who I really hate, but I'm going to start with Morgan Moses. That report that he didn't play very well at right tackle, but he was really good at left tackle. And if he goes to Miami, especially a very tackle-needy team, and has to play right tackle, I don't know. I get one of those weird feelings about him. But Virginia pumps off good linemen, so maybe that's just me having some irrational fear. And then I also have to go with Kelvin Benjamin. I know I just defended him, and I think that he can be successful. But if he does end up in Cleveland, dude, a lot of people's careers die in Cleveland.
Yeah, that's very true. It's very true.
That's just... And I'd say the same thing about Greg Robinson going to Oakland, but I think with what Oakland is now trying to do with signing Maurice Jones-Drew, re-signing Darren McFadden, they're going to run the ball a lot. And I think a guy like Greg Robinson would be perfect for that, just a mauler. So I'm not going to make him a bust. I don't think he can be a bust wherever. If Joe Thomas hasn't been a bust in Cleveland, Greg Robinson won't be a bust in Oakland.
That's a good point.
Benjamin could very well be a bust in Cleveland, especially if whoever they get at quarterback doesn't turn out to be, all that they want. Who's your bust?
So first of all, I think Johnny Manziel is a bust. That's who I'm just saying. I'm going to put my money on him being a bust. But I think I've thought about Kelvin Benjamin because I think I kind of agree with you, but I just my gut, and you might be shocked. And his brother goes to Ole Miss. And it's brutal. I think my bust pinger is going off on Blake Bortles. It's not that I don't love him as a quarterback and that I don't love his ability, but I think he just is like from Central Florida, and he's one of those guys that came onto the scene reminds me mentally, I don't at player wise, he doesn't remind me of Blaine Gabbert, but situation wise he reminds me of Blaine Gabbert, just a guy that you had to make that good, but he is that good, and I really do want him to succeed, but his big game ability just completely lacks, and I think it went in his biggest game in his career, he was terrible. So if he can't pull it off, then why should I think he could beat anyone in an NFL game? So unfortunately, I got to put my potential bust as Blake Bortles.
See, I think you're looking too into that Baylor game with Bortles, and I don't disagree with you because especially since I'm going to Cleveland.
I do look into it a lot. You're right.
A lot of great quarterbacks' careers have died in Cleveland, but in that Baylor game, yes, you're right. He overthrew a lot of those deep balls, and that comes down to the mechanic stuff we've talked about in the past. But just the not being scared of, the big scary Baylor offense or this team from the Big 12. And while Baylor's obviously defense turned out to be pretty soft, we saw in their 2 losses of the season, I think that overall just the stuff he did, quarterbacking, leading the team, keeping them on track, keeping them scoring, keeping them going, and Storm Johnson had a little bit to do with that too. I just think I can't discredit him for that game or look at that game like, yeah, that's the game where he needed to play better when he played great. Just a lot of it was more with his legs and athleticism and decision-making rather than being, accurate pinpoint Andrew Luck quarterback. So I agree that I could see Bortles doing it. But who's a guy who's going to be, while we're just still talking about this, who of these guys that you've picked is your surprise offensive rookie of the year? He's not really even in the thinking of it right now. Who comes out as a candidate for offensive rookie of the year out of these maybe late first-round picks?
Offensive rookie of the year. I think that's a good question. Not early. That's a tough one there, Shake and Bake. I guess it depends where you put him. I mean, if we're gonna talk about a later pick, and I'm gonna go off your draft, I'm gonna say it's Teddy Bridgewater, because I think, if he goes in Arizona and he backs up, then obviously he won't have the opportunity. I think it could be Teddy Bridgewater. I also think that, that's tough in this first round. Mike Evans, and he's one of those early guys. I think, I really don't know. I'd probably say Jordan Matthews. A surprise rookie of the year could be Jordan Matthews if he gets into the right situation with the right quarterback, the right offense, and he's got the right guy throwing the ball. I think there's nothing stopping that kid. I think if he can do it at Vanderbilt and he can be the guy and put that team on the map by himself, and he can definitely come in the league and make some unbelievable catches and really and shock people.
I'm going to go with Marquise Lee because I like him in Carolina where you had him, and I like him in Philadelphia where I had him. I just think this is a guy who, remember when he was the #1 receiver in this class, not too long ago, and all of a sudden, he's the 4th or 5th best receiver maybe because, he was injured all this year. He didn't have a quarterback pretty much until Ed Orgeron took over the team. And now that Lane Kiffin's wearing crimson rather than red, I think that's going to – I just think that Marquise Lee is a guy who can be a stud for a team, especially if he has to be the #1 option for Cam Newton. I think he's a guy who could just be put on the map very quickly and put himself on the map because I think either of those 2 offenses that we have him going to is going to be teams that get the ball in his hands quickly. A lot of short, quick passes, a lot of hurry up. And then, dink and dunk, all of a sudden, hey, Marquise Lee, why don't you just run as fast as you can straight to the end zone, and we're just going to hurl it up to you, and you're probably going to beat everyone down the field. I think he's undervalued at this point, and I think that he's going to come out and have a very nice rookie year for wherever he goes. And if he keeps falling and someone else gets another chance to scoop him up at the beginning of the second, it's not even fair.
Yeah, I think that if he has a season that he has 2 years ago and he has it this year, I think he's right up there with Evans and Sammy Watkins. So I think he's honestly a steal wherever he goes, comparing him to that season 2 years ago. But and I agree with you. I think we got 2 wide receivers here that have devalued some. One I think is because of Vanderbilt, and the other is because he's injured and he just didn't have the same numbers as his junior year. So I think you got 2 receivers here who definitely have a lot of potential to be rookies of the year.
And then just one more thing, just to kind of do the opposite of the offensive. Who's a defensive player who's just not going to show up for a couple of years? Not necessarily going to be bad or be a bust, but a guy on the defensive side who's just not going to show up rookie year or maybe not even sophomore year.
I'm looking at the guy I want to pick. I just want to do one more scan. I think it's Anthony Barr. I think he's got 2 years at the position. I think he's going to need, and I think if he goes to Dallas, which he probably won't, he'll need to change the scheme. I think it depends on where he goes. I think he could come in and be a stud. I also think that he needs no pressure to come in and be a stud. He's had 2 years of the position. He needs to get under a great defensive coordinator, get into a great system, learn the position, and then I think in 3 years we're all going to be sitting back like, holy crap.
I could, and I hate to say this because I love this guy too, just like we both like Barr, I could see it being Khalil Mack.
I thought that was my other. I was going to say Khalil maybe.
Just even if he goes to a great situation, the problem is he's just unless for some reason he goes to Houston, like Houston trades the first pick, or he goes to like in Atlanta because he either falls or Atlanta trades up for him. Good players get lost in places like Jacksonville and Oakland very quickly. You saw who just signed with the Bears, who was from Texas and played for Oakland the last couple of years. What?
Lamar Houston? Is that who it was?
Yes, Lamar Houston. Thank you. Lamar Houston was a great player for Oakland, was a high second-round draft pick. Unless you really knew who he was or watched just a ton of random NFL games, if you're just kind of a casual Bears fan and you saw that you spent all that money on some guy from Oakland who you'd never heard of, you'd be like, well, that was a waste of money. And I could really see Khalil Mack struggle with this Jacksonville team, not only because Jacksonville is not going to be a very good team for a little while, but just not adjust to the pace of the NFL all that fast. I'm not that worried about that as much as I'm worried about the pace of the game, because you saw him play very well early in the year against an Ohio State team who was, ranked in the top 3 pretty much the entire year. But I just worry about him kind of just getting lost in the shuffle of a bad team. So I could see Khalil Mack taking a couple of years to really be this, worthy number 3, top 5 overall draft pick.
Yeah, I think that's a tough situation for him. I think, people. I think a lot of people are really overlooking Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo is not a high caliber team. Yeah, he played great against that Ohio State team, but he's a great player, so that's what you expect out of him. But he just went through an entire season of playing garbage teams that he was way above the skill level.
You're right.
Yeah, he's going to come in and he's going to take a lick from an offensive lineman. He's going to be like, all right, this league is for real. I mean, I think he's going to be shocked, and I agree with you there. I think that it's coming from not a great conference and then coming into a bad team, I get nervous that he could get lost.
Yeah. Well, everyone, thank you for any of you who have stayed up to watch this, but this will obviously be on the blog right before the draft starts. I want to thank everyone for who's going to watch this post and for keeping up with our blog. It's been a fun off season, but really the culmination of the off season starts tomorrow, and I am very excited for that first draft pick to come up. I hope you all are too.
Couple hours. I mean, it is draft day, and it's Baker and it's our Christmas morning. So we're really excited. That was a lot of fun. I could honestly probably talk for a couple more hours, but I need to study some history. So good night, people, and we'll have a fun draft day tomorrow.
Absolutely.